Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fire Up Michigan. And we are in prime time. And I have a great crew here lined up today. Well, George Eichhorn is always on my crew every week because this is what we do. But
Yes.
got a couple of other new people on here. We're going to start off with Frank Garza. Frank Garza and I go back a long time. And Frank, give everybody a little bit of information about yourself.
Well, I cover the Detroit sports for the Latino Press, and been a long time Detroit sports fan. But I'm also involved in the sport of boxing as an official, a member of the WBC, and recently appointed to the Oriental Pacific Boxing Federation as an advisor, and have been training officials for a number of years.
Well, Frank's going to be joining us periodically here on Fire Up Michigan, so we're thankful to have him as a part of our team. And now, I don't want to get any trademark, but the guy I've been looking forward to bringing on for a long time is Dom Darubis. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, or if not, am I?
Wow. You're one out of maybe three people in life that got it. It must have just been a lucky guess. I don't even understand the pronunciation, but you nailed it, sir. So shout out to you for
Well,
that.
when you're in the broadcasting business, if you don't get these pronunciations right, you're in deep trouble. So, meanwhile, Dom, okay, we're going to call you Big D. No, not Dallas, Detroit, but Big D at our show is Dom. All right, Dom, why don't you let everybody give a little bit of overview about what you're doing? I know you got a lot of things going. And I appear with Dom on a couple of other shows, and I'm delighted to make an announcement tonight here on this show that Dom Big D is going to be a permanent part of Fire Up Michigan, and I'm so excited to have this guy on. I gravitated to him for a while when I first started chatting with him. Went on a couple of shows over the weekend, and I know that he's ideally suited for the opportunity to work with George and I every week. And we'll make sure that he's loaded up with a lot of connections in Metro Detroit. Gets Frank tonight, and Dom's just going to continue to build his status in Detroit media. And we're so proud to have you, Dom, as a permanent member of Fire Up Michigan. But that said, Dom, all right, why don't you give everybody an overview of what you're pretty much doing now?
Well, a couple years ago, a good friend of mine, Megan Price, she has a couple of her own shows, the NBA Carousel, the Sip Off. She also does the NFL Carousel, which was your friend, rest in peace, Alex Fleming's baby. That was how I cut my teeth doing podcasts. She got on as a Cowboys rep. They didn't have a Lions rep, so she reached out to me. I got in touch with Alex, and it's just been growing and growing ever since. Got a couple other Lions shows that I do Wednesdays and Fridays. Another one that I co-host on Saturdays that you were on, the Gauntlet, and then Sundays. Basket Bros just came about. Me and Jacob just BSing late at night on the weekend, like, hey, we should do a show about old school basketball. And the next thing you know, we got it together, and here I am.
Well, I
Glad,
tell
glad
you,
to be here, ready to talk some football.
well, I love going on those shows. I love Pundit, where obviously Jacob has welcomed me with open arms. Come on there, Jennifer, Lewis Matthews, and the rest of the people over there are just fantastic. And so I really enjoy going on there as well. We have Denzel Snipes, I think goes by Jay Nelson, whatever. Everybody has a different name in this business, anyways. But I really like working with them. JB Ellis, John Shear, Eric Wilson, Jake Malik. The list goes on and on. And of course, I knew Alex Fleming because I met him over at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and when we did some shows on fantasy football. Got rest in peace, Alex.
He
At
was a
least
good guy. I miss him.
carrying your legacy on by working with these incredible people as well. So obviously had a good time on Basket Bros. And I've been around the NBA my whole life. So I feel very fortunate that I could be on that show with a bunch of classy individuals. So with that said, we got George Eichhorn. George, why don't you let everybody tell people about your book and give a bit more of an overview about yourself.
Oh, well, I've been covering sports for too many years to mention, going back to the 1970s here in Detroit. And I've got a book that I wrote called Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air, which chronicles the history of sports broadcasting in Detroit with legends like Ernie Harwell and Van Patrick and Bud Lynch and Bruce Martin and George Blaha and even before him, Tom Hemingway. Guys that have covered the teams, but also done sports on the air, which we know with Al Ackerman and Dave Dials and Ray Lane, people like that. And so the book's available from Arcadia Press. There's a link to the book on any of my columns that I write for the Motor City Tribune on the South Florida Tribune website. And you can go to www.southfloridatribune.com, and there'll be a link there for you to order a copy of my book. Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. Scott Morgenroth is in the book too. He's featured as a sports broadcaster because we go back, Scott, many, many years together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you are got some good pictures in there. I know you're interviewing Jimmy Connors and Muhammad Ali as well.
Yeah, I'd say they're pretty good. Well, we got a great show lined up. Title of the show is Can the Lions Make Substantial Improvement? Before I go to our existing topics, I want to thank Ron Kroll for providing us with a question. So, you know what? I'm going to lead off with a chat room question before I go out there and go to the agenda at hand. And Ron Kroll to us is the question is, what do you guys think about ex-Lion Matthew Stafford? Well, you know what? What I do on this show here is I go to everybody to avoid anybody talking over each other. Everybody has a fair opportunity to go out there and voice their opinion. So with that said, Frank, what are your thoughts about Matthew Stafford?
Well, I was in favor of the trade. I thought it was a good trade to get Jared Goff. He has the credentials. He came. People were saying that he was damaged goods coming to Detroit, but I think it's just a confidence thing. He didn't have a good relationship with his head coach, and his head coach back in L.A. I felt did everything in his power to try and destroy the guy mentally, but physically and credentials, he had them. We had a good quarterback in Matthew Stafford. I like Matthew Stafford, but I think the writing on the wall was that if he stayed in Detroit, the type of play that he was having to play under, his career was not. I wouldn't think that he would even have maybe 1 year, and that was it. Two, stretching it. But going to another team that could protect him, I think he extended his playing career about 4 or 5 years. I think that game we had against Minnesota last year, where Goff came back and won it in the final minute or final seconds of the game, I think that restored a lot of his confidence. And that was something that I was looking for in Sunday's game, his confidence level. It was lacking a little bit. He overthrew a couple passes, but he did come back after that pick and put some points back on the board. So I'm liking what I'm seeing out of him. I think that there's a lot more to see out of him, and that's the way I feel about the trade. I was in favor of it.
All right, well, more activity in the chat room, which is a beautiful thing. Ron Kroll, obviously, I believe, has your book, or at least has seen it, but he went out there and said that I have the best picture he's ever seen of myself and Muhammad Ali. John Gonzalez, thanks a lot for coming in. He comes on our shows. The Lions gave the Eagles a run for their money. And John Gonzalez also continues to talk about the fact that DeAndre Swift is a beast. We're going to get to that in a moment. And, of course, Ron Kroll says it's dynamite and worth showing on the show. The only person would like it to me. So, all right, Ron, John, appreciate you guys chiming in very much. More than appreciate. All right, George, with that said, why don't you talk about the Stafford question?
Well, yeah, I agree with Frank. I think it was time for Matthew to move on. And I think from a career standpoint, he made the wise decision. I'm glad the Ford family was open to the trade, because if they really wanted to get bullheaded, they could have, played hardball and says, no, you're not going anywhere. You're staying here. But let's be honest. I mean, the man put in his time here, 12, 13 seasons. He did a good job in the community. I mean, the stuff he did for Blue Cross Blue Shield, for Mitch Albom and Say Detroit, I mean, is incredible. The man, he and his wife put their heart into this community. So I got nothing but good things to say about him. I'm happy for him that he won the Super Bowl. I'm concerned about his elbow. The stuff that came out in training camp about him. He did have a procedure done, supposedly. But he had a terrible, terrible first game with that offensive line. I don't know where the hell those guys were playing, but they certainly weren't playing on a football game that night, letting him be sacked 7 times. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I also, like Frank, I was in favor of the trade. I thought the Lions got a hell of a deal with the draft choices and what they got in that package. Stafford's a great quarterback, but I'm hopeful that Goff can be a good quarterback here as well.
The comments keep coming. I'm going to read them Ron Kroll says about that Muhammad Ali. It's iconic and awesome. John Gonzalez, Goff has a big arm, and I'm looking for major improvement from him this season. We're going to get to Goff in just a moment. And, of course, Ron Kroll, back to it. You had to say, George, a great job in the community, a real gentleman. All right. That leaves Big D. Dom, all right, give me your thoughts of Matthew Stafford. Then we're going to transition over to Jared Goff.
There's a number of ways that I can attack this, but I'm going to start with what I wanted to happen, what could have happened, and then what ultimately did.
Okay.
Obviously, Matt Stafford is the best quarterback in this franchise's history, other than maybe Bobby Lane. And as much as I loved him, the way that his career went, with all the regime changes, head coaches, offensive coordinators, early in his career, Matt Stafford looked to me like a Brett Favre type guy. Huge arm, gunslinger, was going to throw touchdown passes into windows that you didn't think existed, let alone were open. And then he was also going to throw some picks where you were like, why? Moving forward from that, I was in favor of a Matt Stafford trade multiple years before it happened. I really think there was a good chance that we could have fleeced the Cowboys the way that we did with Roy Williams. And then even after that, I thought there was a very good chance that he would go to the Raiders for Derek Carr and a pick or two, especially right after Gruden took over. He's a huge Matt Stafford guy, and he made Derek Carr cry week one. The fact that that didn't happen, whatever, water under the bridge. As far as the trade goes, it was definitely time to move on. I'm glad we got something for him. There was a lot of other rumors about other trades that were out there. It wouldn't have netted us 2 draft picks, but, there was rumors about Denver offering a pick and a starter, possibly Jerry Jeudy. San Francisco wanted him. It was going to offer a defensive lineman. There was rumors about Washington and possibly Chase Young. So as far as the trade went, I wasn't shocked. I'm not necessarily for or against Jared Goff. Like, he accomplished some things with a very good team in front of him. I don't blame his play or lack thereof for losing that Super Bowl. It was Todd Gurley being hurt. But I mean, one thing, we're going to talk about Goff later, but just very quickly, once we got him, I embraced him because he's our guy for the immediate future. And what I want to see, with the new regime and with Jared Goff, the only thing I asked for was continuity. In 5 years, I want Dan Campbell to still be the head coach. I want Brad Holmes to still be the GM, and I want Jared Goff to be the quarterback. And he did everything I asked of him last year. Cut down on his fumbles, 2-to-1 interception ratio, and he had the highest completion percentage of his career with garbage receivers.
Right.
But I love Matt Stafford, and I'm so happy for him that he got a Super Bowl. The only thing that bothers me is by the time he retires, he's going to have better numbers than Dan Marino, and he's got a ring. But will he ever get mentioned in that same breath? Probably not. JB Ellis, my sideline crony, refuses to give Matt Stafford his flowers.
Really? I'll have to ask him about that. John Gonzalez talks about the fact that Greg Landry was pretty good too. And of course, Ron Kroll, it's disappointing by the organization not retiring the number in the future of their organization. It's typical of the organization for the last 6 years. I'll just keep my comments brief on Matt Stafford because we have a lot to cover here. Number one, love Matt Stafford. Did the best he could with what he had to work with in Detroit, piled up a lot of numbers. The guy has a heart of a lion. Maybe there's a pun intended there. And of course, to me, he did some pretty good things. He did everything he could, had a lot of comeback wins, and I'm just glad that he was able to be traded to a place where he could be a bit more productive. But I will always think nothing but the best of Matt Stafford. You know what? The one little thing I like to kid around since the Michigan-based show wears the same number as Gordie Howe, number 9. Not the worst thing in the world. Okay, so take it for whatever it's worth. All right. We'll go on to our next subject because we have a good size agenda. And we might as well just go to Jared Goff now. All right. Not only does he have a beautiful girlfriend in Kristen Harper, my goodness, is she adorable. But Jared Goff, to me, is one of those kinds of guys, and I'll get my opinion in it because I want to defer to you guys, is to me, I like the guy. I really do. And, again, a change of scenery was necessary. And Brad Holmes brought him in here because he had enough faith in the guy. So you might as well give him a fair amount of time. He showed some improvement toward the latter part of this year. Scoring 35 points yesterday wasn't the worst thing in the world for the Lions, even though they lost. So, they're just trying to build on what they're doing. So, think you got Jared Goff in the trade plus what I think a third round pick and 2 first. And if by chance the Rams have a down year, this year's pick could be worth a lot more, and they already got a pick. So, to me, I hate to say this, I would have made the trade straight up Stafford for Goff if you had to, but the fact that Holmes got 3 picks out of it's not the worst thing. So I'm really happy that Jared Goff's with the Lions, and I hope that they're able to make something out of it by upgrading the talent. That's me. All right, Tom, we'll continue on that one.
Me?
Obviously, yeah. Obviously, you feel pretty good about the trade. So elaborate on Jared Goff now that we've transitioned from Stafford to Goff.
Well, I've seen a change of scenery definitely was needed. The fact that that the new GM went out and got him, and wrapped his arms around him, as has the rest of the coaching staff and the whole organization. It's great, and I mean we've seen what Jared Goff is capable of with a good offensive line and good weapons, and I mean it's not a knock on him, but if this offensive line ends up being as good as we all think it will, and it looked pretty good yesterday, there's a lot of quarterbacks in the league that can succeed when given that sort of time, that sort of time to survey the field and look at his first read, his second read, not to mention the fact that this team projects to be, run heavy and ball control as they were when he was a Ram. Todd Gurley was a bell cow. DeAndre Swift, not a bell cow. Neither is Jamal Williams, but the combination of the two. And the main thing that I like the best about Jared Goff, if he's not number 1, he's number 2 in the entire league as far as active quarterbacks. Number 2 in the league in passer rating in play action. Does he have a great arm? No. Does he have a very good arm? Yes, he does. He also has very small hands. Like, fumbling is always going to be an issue with him, but this is also the guy that out-dueled Patrick Mahomes. Remember that game on either Monday or Thursday night a few years ago?
Game, yeah.
80-some points scored. Yeah, Jared Goff was the better quarterback on that day. So, like I said, my personal feelings about Goff don't really matter. Do I love him? No. Do I like him? Yes. He's capable of doing some things, and like I said, I just want to see continuity. If he can do what he's capable of, this should be a good team going forward.
Frank Garza, what do you think?
Well, I want to go back to the trade and say that to give up Matthew Stafford, the Lions just weren't going to give him up for nothing. And so the value we had to look at that. So you have to look at Goff and the trade picks that we got, and that should tell you that Stafford was a high profile trade, and we got a lot out of that, and that the Lions just weren't going to settle for anybody because there was a lot of offers on the table. So I think the Lions looked at it not only with the draft picks, but also who we were going to get face to face with Stafford. So I think that we got a good deal on that. I want to say something that I don't think that we have seen the true Jared Goff yet.
Okay.
And I think the reason for that is I don't think that we've had consistency in the play calling, both last year and this year. And until we get that, I just don't think that that, especially in yesterday's game, I don't think that we utilize Jared Goff in the right way. I want to see more razzle dazzle when Campbell was calling the plays. I think Jared Goff is one of these guys that just wants to move that ball down the field. He doesn't feel like he wants to control the clock. He just move it down, let the defense get me the ball back, and let's put some more points on the board. So I want to see some more consistency and continuity in the play calling from the offense, whoever's calling the plays. And I don't know who called the plays yesterday, but I wasn't too happy with them. So I'll just close saying that I don't think that we've seen the true Jared Goff yet.
Fair enough. George, what do you think?
Well, I mean, no, we haven't seen the true Jared Goff. He hasn't been here that long. Okay, so I agree with that statement. The Lions are going at it methodically. Let's face the fact: the interior line, both on offense and defense, and the draft and the talent acquisition department is a smart move. You got to protect your quarterback, and they got better guys now to do that. As far as the offensive line goes, led by Frank Ragnow, of course, and Taylor Decker. So, I mean, I think the Lions are doing the right thing. And that combined with, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, as Scott alluded to, the receiving core and the mix of the running core is really helping Goff very much as far as the play calling goes and the variety. Frank, I got to disagree with you a little bit. Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell, I thought, called a pretty good game, at least the second half, especially offensively. The defense, that's a whole nother story we'll talk about. But I think that Goff does have the tools. I mean, he got them to the Super Bowl in LA, and also the fact that he does have a good arm. And, the strength of the Lions is going to be on play calling, is going to be on variety, and, to keep the defense on their toes and on their heels, not knowing what play is coming next. I agree. Get creative in that area and be creative in that area. And the fact that they got some more tools for Goff to use, as I said, we'll talk more about that, Scott said.
Yeah, well, Penei Sewell was a good pick last year as well.
Yep.
Another guy. So actually, we're going to talk about the wide receiver situation a little bit sooner. What do you think, Don? You're giving me this interesting. You didn't like that pick, Penei Sewell?
No, I didn't like it. I loved it.
Oh, all right. Well, that's even better. Okay, Don. Good stuff. Hey, Ron Kroll. I'll mention a few things.
About 6 months before the draft.
Yeah.
I had a nocturnal emission about Penei Sewell, and I'm like, there's no way we'll get him. And then he started dropping. Shout out to all those teams that drafted receivers that went to the same college as their quarterback, because that's how he fell to us. The only thing that made me nervous, briefly, Penei Sewell, as far as I know, is the most highly touted lineman coming out of college since Tony Mandrich. We saw how that worked out, but I knew Sewell was better. I didn't like how they, kept moving him back and forth. But yeah, a great pick.
Well, we're going to go back to the chat room. Ron Kroll asked, well, when will the Lions ever get to the Super Bowl? We'll address that later on. He also talked about the Lions need help, need to back up results. I think by now we all know that. Razzle Dazzle needs to be backed up with actions. Tools and armor not enough with the history of this organization, and he's frustrated after 65 years. Join the club, Ron. All right, with that said, okay, why don't we go into the wide receiver position? And Lions did make some upgrades. I know DJ Shark well because I saw him play in Jacksonville. We know St. Brown, whatever this guy is. I'll never get that name right. So
not that hard. Amon-Ra St.
Brown.
Don't try to pronounce his brother's name, because no one can.
I'm not going to do that. So, all right. So let's talk about the receiving position. Dom, give us a brief synopsis about where the Lions receiving core stands at the moment.
Well, it's kind of about where I thought it would be. I mean, I'd like to start by saying that I spoke the DJ Chark signing into existence about 6 months before it happened. A buddy of mine that I'm going to put you in touch with, that I do my Wednesday and Friday show with, Jeremy. I mean, we're just rabid Lions fans, and once we're either mathematically or realistically eliminated from the playoffs, we start looking at draft boards. We start looking at free agents. So about 6 months before the signing started, we said, okay, we need a reasonably priced wide receiver that we can put on a prove it deal. Okay, who's on the list? And we looked, and there was DJ Chark. I said, okay, DJ Chark, that's the guy I want. And then it happened. And he had a drop early in the game yesterday, and I was like, oh, come on, Chark. Amon-Ra, he was a steal in the draft. He came on late in the year. I don't know that he played a single snap, and I don't know why. is Quintez Cephas. There's a lot of people talking about, oh, he's going to get cut. I'm like, you better not cut him. He was the best receiver on the team before he got hurt last year. Hopefully we see some snaps from him next week. Josh Reynolds is he's a Jared Goff guy, so I like having him there. I am not a fan of Khalif Raymond whatsoever. I never wanted him to start with. The fact that he made the roster just irritates the ever-living you-know-what out of me. And outside of that, we're waiting on Jameson Williams to come back. I didn't love that pick when we made it, but considering the relative lack of what we gave up, I like it. And he's the guy that can blow the top off the defense. My guess is, I don't even like saying these things, but it's an inevitability. Chark is probably going to get hurt. Hopefully there's a very small gap between when he gets hurt and when Jameson Williams comes back, because those are our two speed guys. Yeah, very happy with the wide receiving core.
I'm
very
just
happy.
I am amazed that the Lions were able to get this guy from Alabama and traded within the division with Minnesota to do it. That was what intrigued me, knowing that the guy could bite him later. But we'll leave that for another show. All right, George, give me a brief summary of the receiving core.
We didn't talk about Hawkinson, Dom. You forgot Hawkinson.
I definitely would have thrown him in. Brief about
Hawkinson. Don't give me that excuse. You missed him. Don't give me that.
Well, here's what I'll say about TJ Hawkinson real quick. If he doesn't lead the team in either targets, catches, yards, or touchdowns, we screwed up.
Well, he wasn't used enough last year, flat out.
Yeah, he was covered like melted cheese.
Did not use him enough. I don't care. He did not use him enough last year, and he's got to use him more this year. He's very talented. That being said, I'm very happy with Chark. I think that's a good move. I know, Scott, you've told me about him because you covered the Jags, like you said, for a long time. Yeah. And that was a very good move. St. Brown has been really, really good. But I agree with you, Dom. I mean, Cephas is there, and you know he's got to be used. I mean, I'm with you. I like Cephas. I like the tools, and for some reason he just was completely out of the picture yesterday. I don't know what happened. I mean, who knows? It could have been anything. It could have been a sore stomach. It could have been a discipline thing. We don't know what happened going throughout that game, or whatever happened, but he wasn't used at all. So it is an upgrade. Yes, you're right. And Scott, you alluded to it. That was a steal in the draft. I don't care if the guy was coming off an injury or not. Right. And especially like you said, Scott, the Vikings were the ones that made the deal with Detroit to get the second first round pick and Williamson. So when he comes back, yeah, I think the tools, the potential for this receiving core is a pretty damn good. I mean, you know, Calvin Johnson was Calvin Johnson. We don't have a Calvin Johnson, but my goodness, this is the best set of tools I think I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I think the thing that can't get lost in all of this whole thing is the fact that how can anybody hold Jared Goff's performance against him after what he had last year? But that'll be for another time. But I'm going to let Frank Garza get involved here as well. All right, Frank, you got all the information from Tom, George. Give me your thought.
My thoughts are this. I think this year we have a good mixture of talent.
Okay.
You know, in years past, it seemed as though we just had one good receiver like a Calvin Johnson. Right. There was a go-to guy. But I think that this year we have 3 or 4 go-to guys that we can count on. Okay. But I have to say, yesterday's game, in my opinion, there was too many drop passes, and that's something that the receivers they're going to have to work on that, because the drop passes just weren't drop passes. They were crucial drop passes that kept us from running away with the game. I agree with George. TJ Hawkinson was not used to his full potential last year, and I hope that they don't make the same mistake this year. I think that he's a big guy, and they need to get the ball to him more often. St. Brown, I don't know. He disappointed. He made some big catches, but he made some drop passes that really irked me yesterday.
Couple drops.
Yeah. But I think, again, I'll just close saying that I feel that we have a good mixture of talent, and I just hope that we're able to use all of them.
Okay. Well, you know what? Let's stay on the offensive side of the ball one more time. I got 2 other topics I want to get to. I want to make sure I get to everyone.
Real quick, because I pulled up the snap counts. Quintez Cephas played 2 snaps on offense,
Oh.
8 on special teams. They said we were going to cut him because he couldn't play special teams. So now you're running a guy out there doing something you think he's not good at, and you've got all the other receivers ahead of him on the depth chart dropping passes. Make that make sense.
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. Good stuff there.
Good
Dom.
point. Yeah.
Good stuff. All
We'll
right,
see what
Dom.
game 2 brings. Yeah.
I'm telling you, Dom, you bring it, my friend. Why do you think I was excited bringing you on there and making you a part of this bad boy? Because of stuff like this. All right. We'll stay on the offensive side of the ball for one more player. Then I have 2 other things I want to make sure we have time to address. Okay. And we talked about DeAndre Swift. So, all right, Dom, you're nodding your head. Will DeAndre Swift, be able to play the entire season without getting banged up?
I sincerely doubt it. And I looked into this pretty thoroughly more than once. Let me pull up his numbers. Because in the off season and recently, maybe even on Hard Knocks, he was chirping about he wanted to get 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving, right?
Right.
Well, that requires a requisite number of carries, sir, that you've never been able to stay healthy enough for. He had he's missed 3 games his rookie year, 4 games last year. He's never had more than 150 carries in the season. Granted, his yards per carry is good, but he's just he's a fragile guy. I will say, for one, pretty much all Georgia running backs for the last several years, they all have a pretty light load in college. So I knew this guy was never going to be a bell cow. He's not big enough to be a bell cow. I will give the Lions credit, I suppose. It's the first time we've drafted a running back that I didn't already know what his weak point was because, Javid Best, you knew it was concussions.
Right.
Amir Abdullah, it was ball security. Carry on my wayward knee, Johnson, it was injuries. And what happened to all of them in the pros? Concussions, ball security, injuries. I didn't know about Swift right away because I didn't really know a whole lot about him other than the fact that I knew there was several other players on the board that I would have drafted, but we don't go back in time. What I found out was he's terrible in pass protection, which is why we have Jamal Williams. And now in the offseason, you had DeAndre Swift gaining weight and Jamal Williams losing weight because they're both trying to take each other's snaps. Will he stay healthy all year? Gosh, I hope so, but I really don't see it. And it's unfortunate because he's a hell of a talent. However, not fast enough to be named Swift.
All right. Well, George, pretty hard to top Dom's act on that, but do the best.
Yeah. Well, 15 carries, 144 yards. Of course, one of them was huge, 50 yards. So take that one away, and he had 94 yards. Anyway, you add it up. He had a really good game yesterday. Good line protection, creating some holes that weren't there. Excellent game. I'm just, I'm with you, Dom. I mean, we hope he stays healthy. His history doesn't show it though. And the bottom line is that, Jamel is a good acquisition when they got him from Green Bay. So I'm thinking that, even if they share the load, but still, you never know when an injury would happen to either one of them. Obviously, with running backs, there is that fragile nature of them. But Swift, he's got some great tools. And I think the Lions have a really good backfield this year so far. But let's see if it lasts. And like we talked about earlier, the variety for Goff is important. And the running game is extremely important for this team to succeed and this team to win games. Because you cannot just sling the ball down. That's not going to work with Goff as quarterback. I mean, we must have a 1-2 punch, the running, and obviously, Scott, you got to, Swift is the main man to do it.
Okay. All right, Frank, what do you want to add to this?
Well, I'd like to add that our running game is we have a jab, a left hook, and a right hand. We've got 3 running backs, and I like the way that they're mixing them up. Unfortunately, we don't have one running back that I feel like can carry the whole team through the season. But as long as we have 3 running backs that we can utilize in different situations, I think we're going to do okay. Now, as far as the health of Swift, I think in the past he wasn't playing with the offensive line that we have today. I mean, they were making some big holes for him. He didn't have to fight for those 3 or 4 yards. He had 4 or 5 yards, and then he had to fight for the other 2 or 3 yards. And I think that makes a big difference in your wear and tear over the course of the year.
Fair enough. Okay, so
Very good point.
Thank you.
Very good point.
The offensive side of the ball, defensive side, one time. Then I'm going to talk about head coach Dan Campbell. I'll predict a couple win totals. I want to go back to Ron Kroll's question to wrap her up. Now, let's talk about the addition of Aiden Hutchinson. I'm glad the Lions made the pick. We talked about the Jacksonville Jaguars. I was at the game when Jacksonville ended up beating Indianapolis and knocked them out of the playoffs. And then the Lions beat the Packers. And I thought, oh, God. But then what do you think happens? Jacksonville takes Trayvon Walker. Aiden Hutchinson falls in there. Lions got the player that they wanted. Didn't waste any time on draft day. Instead of making everybody wait 10 minutes, it got there 10 seconds. So I'm happy with the pick of Aiden Hutchinson. I'm glad he's in Michigan. So, all right, Dom, go ahead. Give us your take on Aiden Hutchinson.
Well, per our previous conversations, and for those of you that don't know, I am no sort of University of Michigan football fan whatsoever. I was very, am very, will be very worried about that pick. And not only because I remember the last time we took an in-state talent at number 2, he was a bust and he's no longer with us. Rest in peace, Charles Rogers. My thing about it was, yes, it was a position of need, and he was probably the best guy at his position. I would have rather seen us trade down because there were so many other areas of need. And I don't know. Like I said, it makes me nervous because I can't right offhand, and not that history or the school necessarily matters, but it's not like Michigan is known for producing units. That's the school, to our south and slightly east that's in Columbus. That's the Bosa brothers. And what's the guy's name that plays for Washington? Chase. It just, yeah, it seemed like it just seemed like the easy button and the homer pick. I mean, I'm rooting for him and he looks great, but after yesterday, I want to put him on a milk carton. But part of the problem is our defensive tackles are not good. Arguably our next best defensive end, if it's not Charles Harris, is Romeo Arquara, who's not done much other than be hurt since we gave him that money. And, the problems go back further than that. He's versatile, so I know he can play on the inside a lot, but really I think the key to Aiden Hutchinson is going to be the people around him. He's a very talented dude, but when he gets doubled, can Michael Brockers actually break through the line and get a sack for the first time in his life? Like, if you weren't a Lions fan, would you even know that Michael Brockers was on the team? He didn't record a single stat yesterday. I'm rooting for him. I hope he does well, but he has a lot to prove to me. I think he's capable, but we'll see. I get nervous about our first round picks because I've seen us blow so many.
I can appreciate that.
Can't argue with that, Scott.
No.
I want to give Aiden the benefit of the doubt. He's a tough kid. He's a hard worker. He puts 100% of it, 110% as the saying goes, into everything that he does. Yes, it was a bit of a homer pick. Yes, they're winning over a lot of fans in the state of Michigan. I get all that. I'm disappointed there was one tackle yesterday, as far as I know. Wasn't that it, Dom? He had one tackle, one solo.
So. Mm-hmm.
And that's disappointing. That can't happen. That's hopefully an aberration, because the collateral they spend on the number 1 pick and Aiden Hutchinson, I mean, they just can't have that. But I do think that your success, a lot of times, like Dom alluded to, is predicated on those that are surrounding you, those fellow guys on the line, the other tackles, the other guards. I mean, that being said, Aiden is a leader. He led Michigan. I know it was a big homer pick, but they also got collateral when they made the trade with Minnesota, as we talked about earlier, and got a second first-round choice. So But the pressure's on, no question about it. But I'm going to give the kid the benefit of the doubt, and hopefully he will pan out, expectation-wise.
All right, Frank, what's your take on this?
My take is I'm going to be a little easier on the guy. I think you guys are being a little too hard on him. He's not a seasoned player. I mean, in college, yes, but for me, college and professional football are two different things. So this was what is, he's still a rookie. Has he improved since the preseason? I think he has, and I think that we're going to see more improvement out of him as it goes on. He has to learn his position, and it's a position, that front line on the defense is a position that you have to learn firsthand. You can't read about it in a book. And the good thing is, coming from the U of M, he's going to be facing opposition that he may have faced in his college years. So that's a good plus. I think it was a good pick. I also, and I'm just going to throw this out there, I know that we're talking about Hutchinson, but I like that pick on Rodriguez. And I think comparing that with Hutchinson, what I'm seeing is that Hutchinson's role might be to tie up as many players as he can, because we're going to rely on our linebacking crew.
God, I hope not.
I think that's what the game plan is going to be. Have the defensive line tie up the line and let the linebackers make the plays. And I think that's what we're going to see for the year.
Yeah, I'll just chime in briefly on one more topic to get to. And just so you know, folks, after the show here, go to Fire Up Florida immediately after the broadcast. Mark Mancini will be joined with Avi Greenwald as well as Greg Fuchs. So we have a doubleheader tonight. So I like to pick with Hutchinson. Just give it a little bit of time. I'm not going to rush judgment on it at all. I wanted to see them pick them, and I hope and pray that it does work out. One more. So, I'm not ready to rush the judgment on this one. I really am not. And he's a high motor, high energy guy, and the Lions haven't had any nastiness on defense since Ndamukong Suh was there. I mean, nastiness. So we'll see what Aiden can do. All right, last thing I want to talk about tonight is head coach Dan Campbell. And you know what? I'd run through a wall. Anybody that can do push-ups there. So, all right. So, Frank, lead it off this time. What are your thoughts about Dan Campbell as a person and as a coach?
Well, over the years, I've seen a lot of head coaches, and as like George, we go to the training camps and we see how the players react with the coaches. And with Matt Patricia, Ron
Marinelli.
Yeah,
Marinelli.
Just put the list on Jim Schwartz.
You're not seeing you're seeing the players show a lot of respect to Dan Campbell. And the other thing is, I think this is the first crew that we've had of coaches that have all had NFL experience. Am I right in that?
About 6 or 7 of them have. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very good coaching staff, I think.
Yeah. I think Dan Campbell, look at what he's brought in. And I think that's how we need to measure him. He really wants to win. When you talk to him, you can, he just exudes that feeling of that he wants to win. He's really taken this, not only professionally, but he's taken it personally, and the players really respect him. And going back to Monty Clark, who was a friend of mine, and Monty said to me, he said, we have a problem in the locker room. And I've heard that from other players too. And I think that Dan Campbell is the type of guy that can go in the locker room, and if there's any problems, he can take care of it. And I don't sense that animosity among the players like I had in years past. So I'm all in favor of Dan Campbell, and I like the job that he's doing.
All right, George.
Well, yeah, and the lack of head coaching experience doesn't concern me as much with Campbell. I mean, because like you said, Frank, he has the backs of the players, and the players have the back of him too. He is very intense. And Scott, you remember a guy named Dick Vitale, who came into the Detroit Pistons organization after an incredible career at University of Detroit basketball. And Vitale took every game seriously. It really ended up costing him because he couldn't exist anymore. I mean, the Pistons put their trust, and I know I'm comparing apples to oranges here, but it reminds me a little bit about the intensity of Dick Vitale when the Pistons went after him. And unfortunately, he ended up getting fired by Bill Davidson and the team. But the bottom line is that the intensity and the love of the sport and means so much. And you're right. Campbell has so much emotion riding on it. I'm hoping for the best because he's the real deal. To me, he's the real deal. And he's putting his heart into this franchise. And I know he's emotional, but he's getting a lot out of those players. And I think it'll continue.
All right, Dom, and then I'll incorporate my thoughts, and then we'll take care of some wrap-up business.
I just blinked out for a minute and thought about Dick Vitale and those awful 70s teams at Cobo Hall. It was before I was alive, but I'm well versed in what happened there. First and foremost, prior to Dan Campbell being hired, when we were doing our GM and head coaching search, I said one or both of these guys are going to be someone either that we've never heard of or that was never on our radar. Most people, I had barely ever heard of Brad Holmes. I feel like maybe I heard his name and I'm like, oh, is that yeah. Dan Campbell I'd heard of, former Lion. Out of the candidates that were there, as far as people that we interviewed, I think he was the best one for the job. I don't think he's ever going to be a great X's and O's guys, but you could tell, as you know, literally within a week or two after he was brought in, like the team bought in. Like you said, they will run through a wall for this guy, and he's got a good staff around him. He's definitely a risky guy with the onside kicks and such, but people love it when it works out. The main thing I'm looking for from him is continuity and improvement. Right. When we hired him last year, I said this team is very short on talent, but they will be very long on effort. We will lose a lot of close games because we don't have a coach or much of a staff or a team that knows about winning close games. Like, that's the NFL. Games are close. The worst team in the league is not that much worse than the best. It's close games. Spreads are never more than 5-6 points. So, yeah, I just want to see improvement, and, he needs to figure out where he's at as far as who's calling which plays in what situations between him and Ben Johnson on the offense, because, you can't be stepping on a guy's toes, but at the same time, you also have to know when to step in and make the call. But like I said, I hope that he's still the head coach in 5 years, because at this point, I long for the tenure of someone like Wayne Fontes. And I don't think anyone was real happy about Wayne Fontes when we hired him. He'd never been a head coach. At least Campbell's been an interim. Right. So we'll see. I'm rooting for him, just like, I root for everyone from other than the owners, from the GM down to the janitor, rooting for everyone's success.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to this, they gave him a 6-year contract. I'd like to see him get it through. Continuity there. And Dom, you got to understand the acronym GMTA. And now you'll hear it for the first time, Frank, okay? Great minds think alike. So, GMTA, that's my acronym. So I'm going to continue to reinforce what Dom said. Gave him a 6-year contract, and they lost a lot of close games. They could have quit at any time last year at full intent, but they kept playing for the guy. They got better. So I'm with you all the way. Keep continuity and let the guys see the end of that 6-year contract. It might be the best hire that they've made in a while. So, meanwhile, I know we covered a lot of ground tonight. Great show. Some other comments in the chat room. Jahan Phillips, Dom, 38-35. Yeah, I'd say, Dom, you did better than 38-35. You slammed it tonight. Mark Mancini, who will be joining us shortly. Love the talents. They know their sports. Well, we do the best we can. And I try to do the best when I look for people that know what they're talking about. John Thede, glad that you're chiming in as well. This coaching staff is A1. John, continued prayers. I look forward to bringing you on Fire Up Michigan. You'll be joining Dom, so get to know your teammate, another Facebook user. They are going to surprise some folks. So a lot of things here tonight. Will the Lions ever get to the Super Bowl? I think everybody on this panel would like to think that they will. We'll find out. Ron Kroll brought that one up. Didn't want to disregard that comment. We all want to think that that's going to happen. So Fire Up Florida is next. But before we turn it over to Fire Up Florida, we'll give Frank an opportunity to let people know how to get a hold of him. All right, Frank, have something to say?
I want to add something to what Don was saying about football is about close games.
Right.
In my opinion, the game yesterday, what made the difference was the big play. The Lions didn't get a big play. They didn't get a pass interception. They didn't recover a fumble. They didn't force a fumble. They didn't sack the quarterback for 20 yards. The only big play that was made yesterday was by the Philly Eagles when they intercepted that pass and they ran it for 27 yards for a touchdown. And that was the difference in the score of the game. And that's what the Lions lacked yesterday was the big play.
Okay. Well, we'll find out if that changes week 2. All right. With that said, Frank, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
How can they get a hold of me? I'm on Facebook. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Or, Facebook is the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay, very good. George Eichhorn?
Get a hold of me at gicorn@yahoo.com or on Twitter at SandGSports99.
Tom?
My Twitter handle is right there, Detroit_Dom1. I'm also on Facebook, Dom DeRubis. I'm on a bunch of shows on almost every day of the week on Sideline Sports. And starting today and on Mondays going forward, you can find me right here with these fine gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait for next week. This was fun.
Oh, I got news for you. We can't wait to have you on here. I didn't have an opportunity to read this earlier, but you know what? When you're having a good time, time flies, and you have great people. I will get around to mentioning it now so that people can find us in a lot of different ways. Okay, you can go ahead and subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel. Okay, go to youtube.com, find South Florida Tribune, hit the subscribe button. It's that easy. Or you can visit www.southfloridatribune.com and follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. To advertise, call 954-304-4941. The audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. So there you go, folks. Special shout out to Candy Ebling. Does a phenomenal job putting the website together, loading these broadcasts up so everybody can see it as well. So we're proud of everything, and she's going to be doing a lot of shows as well coming forward. So meanwhile, what a great crew I had here on Fire Up Michigan. Very proud to have you on, Frank. We're looking forward to bringing you on more and more in the future. Dom, well, what can I say? You're a regular. So what am I supposed to say? I get to see this guy probably as many as 3 times a week. I mean, think about it. Or 2-3 times a week.
Lucky
Dom,
you.
Connected. And George and I,
Not much to look at, but I got some pretty good football thoughts in my brain.
Oh, I have no doubt about it. Great first act, and I expect a whole lot more of you. And I've only known George Eichhorn forever, 42 years together and counting. So, meanwhile, this concludes this edition of Fire Up Michigan. My name is Scott Morganroth, appropriately named here, the Motor City Madmouth. Pleased to be joined by this dynamite crew: Frank Garza, George Eichhorn, and Big D Dom. And we look forward to catching you the next time. Have a great week, and please share these episodes with your friends, family. Get it out there. And we want to make sure that everybody can be educated and informed and so forth. So thank you very much for joining us, everybody. We'll catch you next time. Immediately following this show, Fire Up Florida with Mark Mancini, Avi Greenwald, and Greg Fuchs. Good night, everybody. And this is what we're going to be doing, double headers on Monday night. So leading off with Fire Up Michigan. Good night, everybody. And thank you very much for joining us.
Good night.
Thank you and good night.